Hello and welcome to another episode of Casual Friday. I'm here with the Duck. Don, first of all, how are you? And second of all, I've been having doomer thoughts. So let's get
Oh,
started.
I love it. No, I'm doing all right. A little bit on the like I got back into sports yesterday, and I think it's a little bit early, so I'm fucked. But um, otherwise, doing good, enjoying life.
Good. Yeah, you were supposed to start early, After a long layoff, you're so sensitive to any stimulus, any training. You just do a tiny bit and you'll probably be, that'll
Oh,
probably be adaptive, to say the
oh
least.
yeah. I mean, I went climbing for like 45 minutes, and I usually go for like 2 or 3 hours. So
Gonna take 2-3 months to recover now. Will be great.
yeah, love
So
it.
I had these doomer thoughts, right? And they're not about the market for a change.
Oh,
Yeah, I know. Shocking, right? That in itself, I guess, is good news. Although the market itself may be disagreeing at the time of recording. Nonetheless, the doomer thought I had was, people really enjoy Casual Friday. And I enjoy Casual Friday. I hope you enjoy it enough to show up every week at the very least. It's like, I think, our most popular show. And I'm very
yes.
grateful to all of our audience who tune in, like the video, subscribe, leave us a comment. It's nice to have that core base. And so naturally, the doomer in me started thinking, what could possibly end Casual Friday, right? Like, how do we get to a state where this show dies? And I came up with two scenarios. I want to see what you think of them. The first one is that essentially you sort of phase out of crypto where, you've got a baby on the way and all sorts of big changes in your life related to that, of course. It's a very full-time thing. Your trading is already very sort of high time frame swing oriented and very sort of technical based in a way that doesn't require you to be super glued to both crypto and Twitter and what's going on and new stuff and drama, etc., right? So
Yes.
as a result of that, I could see a future where your real life sort of priorities and demands are so high and your kind of crypto commitment drops off to sort of compensate for that and to free up the space. So that when we try to do Casual Friday, I'm like, have you looked at this market? Have you thought of this altcoin? What do you think of this news, this drama, etc.? You're basically so sort of plugged out that the show becomes impossible to run, and or the whole kind of Friday commitment fixed spot time premise basically disappears as well, and so the show dies with it. The second scenario is that my brain finally snaps and I just turbo scam, like big time turbo scam. 3 paid groups, 2 paid courses, 5 ref links, every single altcoin gem you can think of, Patreon, OnlyFans. I launch an NFT, I launch another one on Solana, I launch a third one on Polygon, and I just lose my mind. So what do you think of those?
I mean, one, if you launch an NFT on Polygon, it's gonna be like the second non-scam NFT that's on there, right? Because there's like the Trump NFT, I think, and everything else is a scam, which is quite
Well, the
funny.
gods is on there now as well, right?
Oh yeah. True. They kind of moved over, but they always move over when stuff is topping. So,
Or
but
bottoming.
I mean, both of those scenarios seem very likely to me. So.
Equally likely, right?
So yeah, we should enjoy it while we have it, huh?
Yes, exactly. Like most things in life. Um, Speaking of enjoyment, the market's been moving down, and
Hmm.
that's been to some people's enjoyment, less so to others. You've been tweeting quite actively throughout this period. I also have been tweeting, but it's nonsense as usual to do with like trading and whatever else. Whereas you've been more direct as far as I bought the bottom and sold the top. Just the
Oh yeah, but
usual
I also
Tuesday or
bought
whatever the
back.
fuck.
I
Yeah,
bought
yeah, I
back
wanted to ask you
right
about
before the
that.
show.
Oh, well, there you
So
go. So we basically have a live DonAlt pain monitor on the five
no, oh,
minute
oh yeah. I
as
mean,
we're watching.
I basically got filled at like 23K.
Nice.
So
So you
we'll see
stopped
how
the
that
dump.
goes.
Thank you.
It's my pleasure.
Can we do this again next week?
I mean, I'm hoping that we're not gonna get a dump again, but in general, like my target's not been reached, so I just felt naked not having the position, so I bought early. And I'm actually like, if this dump stays like this, I'm actually getting bearish signals. So this needs to pump basically to invalidate the bearish case before the monthly closes. Otherwise, we're gonna have some trouble. But I mean, so far so good, right? It's bounced $200 from my entry, which is all I care about. $200 big bucks.
I mean,
So
at 100x leverage or 1000x, the numbers
uh,
really start to add up.
True, actually, true.
So congratulations. I look forward to my cut as your co-host. So the monthly time frame. This was look. Also, can we just talk about last week, right? So last week I throw all my FUD at you. Everything I've got. I'm like weekly resistance, monthly, this, that, etc. You're like, nope, nope, it's all shit. I even sent out a tweet saying I spent all of Friday trying to convince Don to be bearish, and it didn't work. And then as soon as, like basically a week later, less than that, you're like, no, fuck it. It's actually a resistance and I'm going to sell. So was this like a delayed onset muscle soreness effect? Just with my bearish arguments, but you kind of don't feel them at first. And the next, over time in the next day, 2 or 3, the local muscular and systemic fatigue just kind of hits you like a truck. Was it the same with my arguments where you kind of shook them off initially? And then it was like, oh shit, wait, never mind.
I mean, partially, yeah. I mean, I had it in the back of my mind. Because I agree with the arguments that you had, right? I was just like, this is good resistance. I just think like we were gonna go up. And then I started seeing like weakness all over the market. And I saw the traditional market, which I thought was gonna go down, behaving in a way in which it usually does before it goes down. So I had not only that whole technical bearishness that both you told me about and my system told me about, but also like all the low time frame stuff and the traditional market. So it's just kind of like, okay, I think I'm getting ridiculous here. I think it's gonna go down. I don't think this is gonna be maintained for too long. Like I sent a tweet out yesterday where I kind of pointed out my worst case, best case thing. And I said like basically the worst case is we go to 1920K and then go up to 30K. And the best case is we just go up in general. So I'm not too bearish. I bought back, so I'm not bearish at all right now. But there's still technical resistance on both the monthly and the weekly. And there's actually, like I said at the beginning, if we close the monthly like we look right now, it's actually going to be bearish to me. Short term,
4 days to rescue this thing, basically.
Yeah, and it's just a short-term signal because I think 20K is massive support. It's some of the best support we've had in a long time. So I don't want to be like, if I say the monthly's at resistance, there's not a big move from 23 to 20K, right?
It'll feel like it.
It will feel like it, yeah, but it's just 15%. And 15% after, like we had a move to the upside of 60, 65%. And then if you pull back from that by like 20% in general, that's not too bad, right? But it will feel bad. So yeah, we'll see how that monthly closes. Right now, I'm hoping that my actual idea, the bearish idea that I had in the last few days and why I sold 25K is actually going to get invalidated. And we'll see how that plays out. I'm hopeful, to say the least. Otherwise, I wouldn't have bought. Like I started seeing stuff I like to see, and I'm also just feeling it. Which, when you're having a run, sometimes that's more than enough, right? Like when you're on a heater and you're kind of dialed into the market. Sometimes it's just enough to feel where you think it's gonna go. Obviously, you cannot continue this. Like when that fails, like when your feelings start failing, basically, like your gut feeling, you don't want to lean into it more. You just want to kind of go back to the systematic approach. But while I'm like running hot, I don't mind just trading my feeling too. Taking advantage of my understanding of the market. And then, like I said, when that goes wrong, I just go back to the tried and tested. But this way, I usually make bigger gains actually than the tried and tested way. It's just the tried and tested way doesn't fail you. And if you trade like this, every time you're going to lose all your money. So you just want to trade it when you have it dialed down.
Yeah, my favorite is when beginners try to trade their gut instinct. And it's like, you haven't earned that, right? Because like when people talk about gut, to me, it's like a subconscious internalization of thousands of trades and tens of thousands of hours of screen time and so on and so forth, right?
Yes.
And sort of that experience cumulatively turns into some sort of pattern recognition, gut-oriented trading. And if you're a beginner, by definition, you don't have that. Like, if anything, you should be fading your gut and your impulses because they're going to be really
Yes.
poorly trained and lead you in the wrong direction. So it's always interesting. People like been trading for like 2 months and like, yeah, my gut says like you. That's not worth shit. You know, you haven't earned that. As far as time in the market, but fair enough. So the levels are mainly unchanged, right? Monthly resistance 23.3, 23.4, 20k is the big pullback level.
Yes.
As far as the monthly goes, and your worst. I think is you got the best and worst case scenario the wrong way around on because both of them ended with the market going up. You're supposed to have at least 4 scenarios, so no matter what happens, you're very intelligent and sort of credible. You need something to retweet no matter what, because otherwise, what's the point?
I'm too stupid for that. I'm
Yes,
just gonna.
clearly.
I mean, I think when I think the market's gonna go up, I'm gonna draw it out, and if I'm gonna be wrong, I'm gonna be wrong.
No, you're not allowed to be wrong, Don.
Oh,
You're only allowed
I've
to be wrong before flipping and being right, so you're ultimately never wrong.
never wrong. Yeah, I don't know. I've been so wrong. Like I've been so wrong so many times that I just like at some point you're just like, well, whatever. It's just how trading is, right? I now really, honestly, I don't mind being wrong about stuff where I don't lose money. I don't really like that goes away after some time on Twitter, basically, where people try to be right even if they don't bet on stuff, which I find quite odd, right? So like they're like, oh, I've seen like Capo tweet about this where he's like, I've just been bearish, but I haven't been shorting. And then you're like cheerleading something, and you're like, haha, the bears are so cool, basically, but you're not making any money on it, and you're not planning on flipping at all because I mean, makes no sense to me. Like if you're not planning to buy, being bearish is just kind of stupid. Just search another market. So
Well,
yeah,
I think crypto like I find it strange. I'm not accusing you of this per se, although you have fired off a couple tweets. But like obsession with Capo to me is really strange because it's just like one dude with a lot of engagement who has seemingly stubborn views about the market, and by his own admission, isn't super active in trading that view. So like, why would you care, right? In theory, I think the reason it's so sort of prominent in the zeitgeist is because it's sort of transcended trading and it's more like an entertainment reality TV type of product now.
Oh, yes.
Where he embodied a certain participant or side in the market. And so he sort of, it becomes, in people's minds, became the flag holder for like the bears, the lows and in, whatever. I mean, poor dude doesn't really seemingly give that much of a shit. Because if he did, his positioning would reflect that. But by his own admission, it hasn't been a huge deal. But the amount of attention that is generated relative to like his own self-admitted activity level is bizarre to me.
I mean, the reason why I even pick a fight, and I'm not really picking a fight, but the reason why I comment on it is basically because I've seen people like him in previous cycles. And what they do is basically they jump onto the bandwagon late, right? We've had the same with bulls as well, where they're bullish at the top, and Capo was bullish at the top. I went through some of his tweets. I went through the history. Just like I don't want to shit talk a dude that is just like trading basically.
Right.
But I mean, from what I've seen, right, he was basically bearish the run up, like basically from below 10k all the way to 40k. Then he flipped super bullish, like around 40k, all the way to 60k, and then all the way back down to 40k, where he flipped super bearish. So kind of what he does is like he cheerleads the position, like that is kind of prominent because I mean it's just been like a long bear market, and before it's been a long bull market, and then he gets very aggressive and very loud at the tops and the bottoms. And the reason why I take issue with that is, especially if it's on the bearish side, I don't mind the bullish side so much. But if it's on the bearish side, that's just going to drive people to sell the bottom and kind of lose faith in their investments. And I mean, fair enough, it's really their own fault, right? If you get convinced that everything is a scam at the bottom by an account on Twitter that has no credentials whatsoever, then be my guest. Right. But still like it's just like a way of using reach that I don't necessarily agree with, and pretending something like being the greatest. And I mean, it's mostly his followers that do that, but it it gets me the wrong way. But I do agree with you that it's actually like, and I mean, it's an odd thing. It kind of feels like reality TV
It
in
is,
a
yeah.
way.
I think it's crossed into the chasm of entertainment, and if anything, I think it's also a symptom that we're sick, Don. Like, so few people on Twitter have like ironclad conviction in their views, and it's always kind of hedged, maybe up, maybe down. If it does this, it'll do that. If it does this, it'll do that. And 10 scenarios, 5 different levels, every 2%, whatever. That when you actually see someone with straight up conviction, like, I don't give a fuck, this is what the market is going to do, it's almost refreshing. And attracts a sort of attention that, and it's a type of content we just simply don't get enough of. So for new people who are tired of like hedged type of content or ambiguity or what have you, or plausible deniability when it comes to tweets, they see that ironclad conviction, rational or not, reasonable or not, whatever, and that in itself, given what the rest of the landscape looks like, becomes attractive. Perhaps it's that. But I also like go back and forth on the whole duty of care thing. Like, if you have a big account, what is your duty of care to your followers? Like, at what follower threshold does that become a thing, if it becomes a thing at all? What do those duties entail? How do you shift the blame of like the quote-unquote influencer versus the audience? How do you measure culpability? All of that to me is very tricky. My cop-out way out of it is just to almost uniformly blame the followers. Because I'm like, you have to assume that whichever anonymous idiot you're listening on Twitter, ourselves included, just doesn't know what the fuck they're talking about. So at best, it's like entertainment content, and then if you're going to listen closely, you're still the one clicking the buttons, and you have to take responsibility and do the diligence to find opposing viewpoints, so on and so forth, because otherwise it becomes an asymmetrical relationship where if you sort of benefit off of their calls, you just keep all the money and it's great, whereas if you lose money, suddenly you feel wronged and it's this person's fault, and suddenly they're fully culpable when you lose and not culpable at all or not responsible for your winnings. And I've always found that asymmetry to be strange, so I kind of play it safe and say, well, this is all garbage basically, and it's on you to make sure you have the correct filters installed.
Yeah, but the asymmetry, I think, comes from the fact that most people, excluding ourselves because we're stupid, make money off of whatever they put out, right?
Sure.
So people shill ref links. I mean, I've talked about this a few times in over the years, but people don't realize how much money you can make shilling ref links, right? It's absurdly high. Like, the people that shill ref links successfully make tens of millions.
Tens of millions, yeah, agreed.
It's not like just a million, like it's tens of millions.
Like,
you
we've
don't
seen
even
the
have
figures.
to trade.
Like,
Oh yeah, and I mean,
yeah.
we've been told by exchanges too, like how much basically influencers that are kind of partnered with them make, and it goes into the hundreds of millions, right? So it's
at the very
not
top, yes.
yeah, so it's not like I think that's where the asymmetry comes from, because people kind of realize that they're getting milked by most people. We're just too stupid to do it.
For now, we come back to the cred turbo scam scenario. It's coming, Don. And also, this comes back to the whole, why are both of your scenarios up? When I shill my influencer course on Patreon or Gumroad or whatever, I'll teach you how to properly hedge tweets, and we'll avoid this issue.
Oh, yeah.
But I do agree, there are some points where the asymmetry just becomes absurd. Like, if someone's pump and dumping like super low caps right on your face or on top of your head, like, you can't say, oh, well, it was your fault, you should have looked into it. Like, there are some cases where that information asymmetry is like particularly egregious,
Yes.
I just think your base case rebuttable presumption should be that you're responsible for your own decisions, and to expect actors on Twitter to be acting adversely to your best interests. And then if you can sort of take it as an entertainment product, a product where people are primarily self-interested, and then maybe there are some gems in the rough or useful insights you can pull away from time to time, you'll be much better off than creating a cult of personality around a single trader and thinking they've got all the answers forever,
That I 100% agree with you. Like, yeah. I mean, some of the stuff is kind of just weird to me. The deifying of, like, is that the word?
Yes.
Deifying, yeah, I knew that I was close. Of like some of the people on Twitter is just very, very odd. Just take it as
any of that
entertainment.
recently, by the way, because you've been pretty hot as far as bottom and top
I
Take
think
that
people.
sentence out of context.
I think people like there's like a group of people that just fucking hate my guts on Twitter anyway.
Cool. I mean, half of them are my old accounts, so don't feel too bad.
Yeah, but I think they keep me grounded basically because
Okay.
I've not been getting too much positives and I've not been getting too much negatives. It's just been business as usual, which
Nice.
I actually don't mind too much. Like I don't like when it gets crazy and like during some times I've had this, especially during the bear markets when you're like vocally bearish and people come to you and you're like, oh, you're my god, whatever. I had that during 2018, and I got so grossed out by it that I was just like, I'm just not gonna do this again. Like I mean, I appreciate people messaging me, being like, hey, you helped me out, whatever. But some of it just went so over the top that I was just like, I don't like it.
Yeah.
I don't want to be that guy, and so I'm quite happy with how it's right now. Like people leave me alone. When people like the angry comments, I can just kind of smack down because I've been right quite a bit lately, and it's always nice. But that's gonna change, obviously. And this is something that people don't get, right? But in general, like traders, like all traders, go through phases, and I would say like when people are very dialed in, they have like really good hot streaks, and then they have longer streaks where they're actually just not dialed in, most of the time anyway. And then they have like poor ones where it's just like, okay, this person just seems to be wrong all the time. You just need to take advantage of like the times where you're dialed in, and then try to minimize the losses while you're not. So there's gonna be a time where I'm gonna be completely wrong again, and it's probably gonna be rather sooner than later, just because that's just how it goes. So I'm just preparing myself mentally to get like
For the
a lot of
humility.
flack.
Yeah.
Yeah, to get a lot of flack, and that's okay. It's just the longer you are on Twitter, the more you're kind of getting used to it, right?
Sure.
I mean, all the smackdowns of like, well, whatever. This guy made an account and he messages me every like 30 minutes per day. How shit I am? Well, so be it. Had
Yeah.
all of that. It's just how it goes.
Yeah. I wish that were relatable. Mine is very strange because I've shit posted so much that people forget that I've posted useful stuff before and I'm capable of posting useful stuff. It's like I'll post trading insights. People are like, what the fuck? Why is Cred being serious? It's like, oh my god, this is what I built my whole thing on, you know? It's like the free trading resource Bible, for lack of a better. I mean that's very self-indulgent, but it is
No,
one of
but
the
it's
most
true,
highly
yeah.
referenced free and long-lasting free bits of trading content that's still being updated like 5-6 years later or whatever, right? So like
Yes.
that's sort of the base of it. But it seems like I've shit posted way too much, so that when I do post something like trading education related or just something useful or market insights, at this point, a lot of the newer followers are surprised, which is like a very sad indictment, you know? It's like, I'll just post something like, oh, where's the joke? It's like, what do you mean, where's the joke? Like, fuck. Why is that supposed to be a joke? But yeah, all of that makes sense. We obviously got derailed as always, but I think if we go back to Bitcoin very briefly, I wanted to ask you if the best case scenario is that it moons from here, right? And that this is just
Yes.
kind of the only pullback from monthly resistance. And your worst case scenario is that the visible pullback holds the omni support. Hey, that's a good term. At 20K before breaking out of the range, right? So
Yes.
then that begs the question in terms of you rebuying. Two questions. One is presumably you just rebought the 50% that you sold.
Yes.
And the second question is, what was this like? What are you rebuying? Like, what's the setup / structure? Is it just that I'm rebuying in case it's the best case scenario and not the worst case scenario? So that just has to be basically any dip into the 23, 22.8, whatever.
So like I can tell you what I'm structurally rebuying basically. I mean, we
Sure.
have a daily support. The 7th of February, that green candle before we nuked. That's what we're retesting. I kind of like that level. And that's what we dipped
Oh,
into.
sure.
And I was like, I'm just gonna like the middle of it is close enough, which is 23K. That seems to be holding so far anyway. Doesn't really, I mean, obviously, we just got there, so could still break down even before this video is published.
That'd be sad.
Yeah, I mean the momentum is clearly to the downside, right? I just think that could hold, and then the thing is, like, if we go to 20K, if we retest that monthly level, that's just like a 13% move to the downside. I honestly don't mind taking that. Like, I don't mind losing 13%.
Would
But
you
I
buy
would.
more, or are you like fully allocated at 23?
I could consider it. I could consider like putting like the eight, like roughly 8% that
Oh, yeah.
I made off of this move, like in again, because I took that out. So I basically bought exactly what I sold in Bitcoin terms,
Yes.
which basically means I made 8% in USD, which is
Miss
quite
me with that
nice.
9 to 5 shit.
So like the reason why I rebought it is because one, we're at daily support.
Yeah.
Two, I'm an idiot fading weekly and monthly resistance. I mean, it's just
Base.
it's not necessarily the best move. Let me tell you that. But it's just I like I have the gut feeling. I have the daily support, and honestly, like I'm targeting 32K ish, right? So like when I look to the upside, and I'm pretty sure that we're gonna go to 30K at least, that's like a 30 to 40% move, right?
Yes.
And I'd rather like not miss out the 30 to 40% move and take the 15% loss on the way than like just miss out that big chunk with half of my allocation, which is just the reason. Like I was just sitting there being like, I don't want to miss it
Sure.
necessarily.
And also, you're
But
no way if it breaks out, do you rebuy somewhere on the breakout? Like that's the
no.
odds of you trading that are very low, right? So it has to be some sort of dip. Because if it's just turbo chads through 20s, you're not a breakout trader.
I'm just gonna sit there on my hands and be
Yeah.
upset.
Yeah.
I mean, they're like I think 25K is like a pretty good line in the sand. Basically, like
Sure.
I mean, if you got like a really really good exit at 25K, right? And I mean, I tweeted about it at like around 25K. Um, then you have the luxury of kind of like looking at the market, and if it goes back to 24.5, you can just rebuy. That eliminates a lot of risk, and I think there is quite a bit of risk here. Like I said, if the monthly closes like this, we have a monthly and weekly bearish setup. That's something that you don't necessarily want to fade.
Right.
And if we're kind of showing weakness here, we break down the next few days, and the monthly closes poorly, I might actually consider like just closing if we don't move too low, and then rebuying 20K. Not entirely sure yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that is kind of like the reasonable take. I said the same thing when I was buying like 15.8 to 16K, where I was like, oh, you can just be reasonable and buy a little bit higher. But like I tend to just not be reasonable. I just rather buy
Oh,
and
I
try to
know.
buy as low as I can, which I mean usually it ends up well, but sometimes you take a massive L. So it depends on your trading style, really.
Well,
I'm
you need
not
to
the
trade
guy.
manage those setups, if you're like
Yes.
against, especially if you're against high time frame trend and other stuff. Like you tried to buy on the way down a couple times, but then exited at very good prices and kept
Yes.
all your ammo. So there's if your trade management is a weakness, then the chances that you can emulate your setup, I think, is very low.
Yes.
Generally speaking. But yeah, that makes sense. So 23-ish, that purple box that I've drawn is daily support. If that breaks, that would be strong evidence of monthly and weekly bearish signals playing out. And
Oh
then
yes.
depending on how long it spends there, you'll look to either rebalance, or if it just pukes to 20K, that's the omni support where you might redeploy the 8%, which you sort of traded around those positions. And presumably if 20K doesn't hold properly, then we're all fucked. So that's a
Oh
different
yeah.
discussion altogether.
I At that point, like if 20K doesn't hold, I'll just take what I've made. And this is the thing, like when you're swing trading and you have high conviction, there's a chance that you round trip like some of the gains if you're wrong.
Sure.
For me, especially with crypto, when I'm swing trading and I have a bottom signal, I'm more than willing to round trip because I want to spend time in the market. I don't know if it makes a lot of sense, like the way I say it, but it's basically the more time, like when I see like a bottom that could be a bottom, basically like a thing that could be a bottom, I'm like, the more time I spend in this, the more likely it is that I'm just gonna hit a home run, basically. So I want to just give it as much time as I can. If it's like 80% pullback or whatever. I mean, this is what we're kind of dealing with right now, where the market went down, like, what is it, from top to bottom?
Like 78 or something.
Yeah, it's like almost 80%, 77, 78. It's close enough to numbers where I could see it be the bottom. And I think actually that 15K, 15.5 was the bottom. And if we're going to go down, we're going to still like hold that area. But I could be wrong on that front. So for me, it's just like I want to spend as much time in the market as I can. And if I have to round trip some gains for it, so be it. Because I think ultimately this is going to go higher. I think Bitcoin at 23K is quite cheap. I've said the opposite when we were trading at 20K back in 17, but a lot has changed, right? I mean, we're 5-6 years down the line. And I think back then 20K was expensive. I think now it's quite cheap. So I just want to have some as like just an insurance that, I mean, I don't want to sit there on my hands when it goes up. It just doesn't feel nice.
Sure. Yeah, all of that makes sense. Let's see how it develops in the coming week or so, because it's going to be a big week, right? Next week
yes.
we have the weekly close. We'll have the monthly close sort of in a few days as well. So lots to look forward to in terms of high time frame signals. But at the very least, in the short term, to leave our audience with something, you want to see that green cluster hold in order to sort of suggest a shallow dip and not like a 20K doomsday dip. Cool.
Yeah.
All that makes sense. As far as ETH goes, the monthly levels are still haunting, Don. You know that's why it's the best and the worst time frame. It's the best because the levels are just fantastic, right? And the number of fake out signals tend to be pretty low. But it's also the worst because like sometimes you'll spend 3 weeks with zero evidence that there's any resistance and it just looks really good and stuff isn't playing out, and then it just starts to turn towards the end of the month and you've spent 3 weeks just getting chopped and thinking we're so back it's over, we're so back it's over, based on every single hourly close. It's like the patience required to trade monthly levels is very, very high. What do you think of ETH here? I know you and I collectively hate the weekly chart because it's a scam. But it is basically stuck at the range high just like Bitcoin was. My view is that if it doesn't basically invalidate this range high, if it in the absence of a breakout, the pullback support is at 1400, sort of 1400, 1420 or thereabouts for ETH. If we're talking like deeper pullback, almost like 20K BTC equivalent, maybe a bit lower into like 1380, 1360, which is a daily level. But basically anything below 1400, like at that point you start retracing the big momentum impulse candle on the weekly, and it just looks really shit. And I don't think that will be the appropriate context for a higher low. It would just look wrong, for lack of a better term. And also on the daily, you kind of have a bit of a clear range if you just look at the most recent consolidation, where 1680 is the range high, and the range low is around 1510, 1500-ish, just like that lowest close made after the first kind of moon, which is a technical term. and now we're just ranging, so between 1500 and 1680, we're kind of trading at the midpoint now at 1590, 1600. But to me, if there's going to be like a larger pullback that retests weekly levels for Bitcoin, that's 20-ish. For ETH, I think 1400 is at least the starting point. What do you make of ETH? Because I think we agree that this like monthly resistance is important, but everything else just seems a bit coin tossy because the chart sucks compared to Bitcoin at the very least.
Yeah, I'm kind of looking at the all-time high from 2018 still. Yeah. I think 1.5K, 1.530, that level on the weekly. I don't know why I find it important on the weekly. I mean, it's technically on every time frame because it's just the all-time high.
Right.
But on the weekly, I would not necessarily like to see that get broken because then it starts looking double toppy. So that's kind of what I'm looking at. As long as we're trading above there, it looks okay. And I think in general, like that 1500 level is a good one. Like if you just box out the 11th of February on the daily chart, if we should nuke, I think that's a good level to buy ETH at. Low time frame, obviously.
So which February was that?
That is the 11th of February, that like green candle during like the bottoming green candle. Like roughly there, I could see like some better action. But yeah, ETH's tough chart-wise. I don't like it. I don't like it on. I don't even like it on the monthly. I don't like it on the monthly. I don't like it on the weekly. I don't like it on the daily. I like the ETH BTC chart.
Yeah.
That's relatively clear to me, and I like the Bitcoin chart, so I can work with both of them.
Yeah.
I cannot really work with ETH USD. So for me, it's kind of like I look at ETH BTC and I'm like, oh, it's not quite at support yet. So I don't necessarily want to buy ETH USD. And then, but I could, if I wanted to buy ETH based on the ETH BTC chart, because I think, okay, maybe ETH outperforms Bitcoin now, I would actually, I just look at ETH BTC and then cross-reference to Bitcoin. If Bitcoin looks good and ETH BTC looks good, that's a good combination. I'm personally not really like worrying too much about the ETH USD
So
chart.
you've just gone full Suzu. Yes, I have abandoned ETH, you know? Like,
I've abandoned the ETH USD chart, yeah. Fuck the ETH USD chart. All my homies hate it. All my homies love the ETH BTC chart. I think that's like the ETH BTC chart is just like, it's a massive range, right? So basically, if you're trading Bitcoin, if you're trading ETH, you're trading Bitcoin. Just with what is that range? With a 13% oscillation in between, basically. So like maybe you get like 13% more upside, maybe 13% more downside, but in general, you're trading Bitcoin. And unless that changes and the Bitcoin chart looks just so much better, I'll just stick with the Bitcoin chart. I think it makes sense. And then just cross-reference with ETH BTC, see if the supports hold or not, and then go from there.
Yeah, that's quite reasonable. I'm yeah, and look, even on the ETH USD chart, that sort of daily range low you mentioned, that cluster at 1500, that does line up with the former range low on the 18th of January. So I mean, there's some structure to it, but yeah, comparatively, like I'd rather go BTC USD, ETH BTC than just ETH USD on its own. Although I am a fan of that monthly resistance because, you know, it's been good, I'll be honest.
I mean, it's been good, yeah. I don't know, it's the monthly is just, there's so many levels so close together.
Yes, it's just, it's a bit of a shit sandwich.
Yeah, and that makes me, like, the support was nice, right? Like the 1K support on the monthly, I really liked actually. But now that we're at resistance, I just ignore it, which is very me.
If you loved it at 1K, you'll love it at 800, Don. You know, as the famous saying goes. No, fair enough. We did talk about 1.1K as a monthly level as well.
Yeah.
Wait, maybe we can just like make some shit up where 1.1K is the range low, 1.7K is the range, and the midpoint comes out at 1400. There you go. I
like it.
All roads lead to 1400 as an important level, as a sort of former all-time high, whatever nonsense. But yeah, also if you like the amount of commentary on Twitter, it doesn't really correlate to the magnitude of the pullback at the moment because it never does. But this hasn't really pulled back from resistance yet, you know? Like in terms of just like a meaningful, visible, large, structural, high time frame pullback. Good luck counting the number of synonyms I use there. It's like we haven't had it yet. It's not there. And if you read Twitter, it just sounds like we're back at the yearly open, you know? Which would be quite cool, but forget all that.
It wouldn't be. I wouldn't like it.
Yeah, but it would be so good for like candle connoisseurs, right? Where it's like, oh, every yearly candle has a wick. This year was different. Psych! And yeah, just for my own comedic effect at that point.
Fuck the candle connoisseurs. I don't like them.
I'm guessing you won't be inviting Mr. Cheds on the show anytime soon, then, bless him.
No.
Fair enough. Final coin to talk. I mean, all the altcoins are red. In my defense, I had to do another altcoin Thursday. I can't say it with a straight face.
I saw it and I was like, it's doomed. It's fucked.
I literally called it in the video. I said, like, Pico Top Thursday or something. And every time the show comes out, the market Pico tops. And it's an amazing indicator.
Oh, we need to cancel it. I have some altcoins. We need to cancel the show.
Put the show on hiatus. Yeah, exactly. We put a moratorium on altcoin Thursdays until we can figure out what's going on. But yeah, this like a classic meme when Cred talks about altcoins, like the whole market's fucked. It's been a perfect indicator. But I did say, like, look, Bitcoin and ETH are like grinding at resistance. That's so contextually unattractive for altcoins on like a intermediate to swing basis.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, I'm boring you, Don. I'll shut up. But
No, I'm sorry. I'm
it's
just.
fine. It's fine. Don't worry about it. I'm used to it. Trust me. Like you're not the first, and you won't be the last. This is how all of my real life interactions go. So I feel more comfortable if anything.
Oh, I feel terrible for being tired.
It's fine. It's fine. You're not the only one. I forgot what I was gonna say. You know what? Let's just move on. Litecoin.
No,
Litecoin is one of the victims of the pullback, specifically a victim of the $100 cred FUD resistance level.
Yeah, can you fuck off with that?
To be fair, you had it as well. You just chose to ignore it, right?
I mean, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, at some point, 100 has to break. No, I tested it like 3 times.
They'll break in like 2026.
I watched the CryptoCred video, and I was told that if it retests resistance more than twice, it's not to be trusted. So
you need to rewatch those videos. That counts as one touch. It's one slick touch. So the pullback levels on this thing, there's one level around like 80-ish, I think, right?
77, yes.
Yeah, 77 is like the obvious one. I was trying to be generous, but fuck it, if you want to go for it, like, yeah, 77 is the pullback level. Are you comfortable round tripping the 77?
Oh, yeah, I would be.
Okay.
I mean, in general, like, I mean, it sounds a little bit odd, and I mean, would I be happy with it? Obviously not, but my targets is like 200.
Would you be happy?
This is like, would you be happy if you round tripped everything? Like, yeah, obviously not.
Man. I love people on Twitter. I used to post the same shit. It's like, you know, happy to be wrong. It's like, motherfucker, are you? It's like, you lose money and your entire market view is invalidated. How happy should you be? You know, it's like, I can't wait to get stopped out. Please stop me out. You know what? In fact, I'm just gonna close the position. Fuck it. Like, that's how much I want to be wrong.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a stupid thing to say. But yeah, I could I would round trip it, because my target is basically, and this is something that I do in my head when I feel like I'm being unreasonable, which is quite often. But like, my target is 220-ish right now, right? And my 70, like the best support is the weekly support at 77, right?
Sure.
So if you kind of took that and put like a risk to reward thing on, I know it's a meme, but
oh my god.
And you kind of were like, okay, would I want to take that trade, right? So basically stopping out on a weekly close below 77 with a target of 220. The risk to reward on that is like 7. I think the chances of it playing out is like, I mean, I don't know, like 50-50-ish, but this is also like, it's very subjective, obviously. So that's a trade that I would be willing to take anytime. So whether I'm in it from 60 or in it from 90, if I didn't have the position, I would technically want to have a position with the market.
I just have a very bad omen for this, because I tried to put on the risk reward tool, and I put it on.
It went to 0,
and the stop went to minus 58.
dude. But
I had to scroll down and compress the chart to be invisible to be able to pull the fucking stop up.
Dude, it does this all the time. Trust me.
That's so cursed. What the fuck?
It does this every time, though. I don't know why. I think it's a log chart problem.
Yes, yeah, you're right.
Like if you have your chart on log, it does this all the time. But yeah, so for me, like. For me, the trade still makes sense. Okay. Because if my target was 130, right, and I looked at this, and I might talk about it differently, but it's not. My target's higher.
I mean, the risk with that system is if your target's like horse shit, then if you use that as a means to anchor yourself, then you reach dodgy conclusions, right? So
yes, I mean,
it needs to be like sensible.
It needs to be reasonable, and if there wasn't a Litecoin halving coming in 150 days or so, I think I'd be unreasonable.
If that number's precise, I'm going to be really upset and worried for you if you know exactly how many days.
Litecoin halving. Let me see.
Do you have like an alarm clock near your bed that shows you the number of days?
Litecoin is in 142 days.
Oh wow,
close enough. So like we have that coming, which is a narrative that I think even the Bitcoiners would want Litecoin to have, because it kind of like whenever Litecoin has a halving before Bitcoin has one, it's just nice for Bitcoiners to see Litecoin pump, because then they can be like, hey, Litecoin pumped, and it's a shit coin.
Pre-drinks.
yeah, it's like easy to draw fractals and stuff. So I think that would be like a narrative that could spring up, given like if the market allows. Obviously, if the market doesn't allow, and this happens all the time, then you just get shit on. But with a narrative like this coming, and my target just being a 2x, like it sounds kind of like, I mean, a 2x isn't really that much in crypto. So maybe my target should be even higher, given we have a narrative.
Yeah, I'm sure that's the problem.
But so I'm willing to take that trade. I would still be willing to take the trade. Like if I didn't have a position at all in crypto, and I would have want some risk in altcoin land, I would still like that trade. Basically, from here, being long from here with a stop loss below 77, a weekly close below 77 would start looking really shitty, I think. Conveniently, quite a bit above my entry still. I would round trip quite a bit, but I would still go out with quite a substantial win, given I trusted Litecoin enough to go decent size in it, which has been an argument I had an argument with a dude like just 2 days ago on stream. He was like, he was arguing that DCA is just the greatest, and then he just wouldn't shut up. And I was like, dude, just leave me alone. Like, I mean, as an investor, fair enough. As a trader, if you start DCAing, you're lost, my dude. You're lost. But he was also like, oh, I mean, I'm up like 5x on my Arbitrum, like altcoin, whatever. Like, I mean, yes, possible that you make a shitload of percent on like an altcoin that is top 500 market cap, but that's also never gonna be more than like, I mean, what do you put in that? Like 0 point something of your net worth, right?
Sure.
If you're sensible. If you're not sensible and you go like heavy in that thing, I mean, and you hit it big, be my guest, but that's not really trading, is it?
Right.
Yeah.
It's like join our Wednesday streams for a live interactive environment. It's like, leave me alone and your size is not size. Next question. Thanks for your company.
I mean, I'm just I'm not really advertising myself, but I've never been good at advertising myself. I'm just a duck. You shouldn't be listening to me in the first place.
Yeah, the DCA thing is just like an insanely tiresome conversation. It's just like the word narrative, like part of my soul, whatever's left of it, not much, left my body when you said narrative. Because I feel like that word has just been contorted into complete, like, to mean nothing at this point. Like a single altcoin goes up for a day and it's like, this is the narrative, and apparently there's a basket and there's a rotation. People just like make up so much surrounding fiction, for lack of a better term, because of like one altcoin move. Or there's like you know, the amount of like this, how strong their views are relative to how much market information there is. Like that must be at all-time highs now. You know, like literally one coin will move for one day and it's like, oh, this is the next narrative basket rotation. It's like, no, it's not.
I want to
made it up.
I want to like go completely off topic and tell you a story that happened to me today in Uber.
Go for it.
So I was sitting in Uber, right? I was just like going to a restaurant basically, and
to work. You had a shift.
Exactly, at McDonald's.
Sorry, go on. I'm an idiot.
Anyway, the driver was Turkish, and he was talking very, very loudly into his phone in Turkish. And I was like, well, whatever. I mean, it's fine. Like, I don't really mind. But like, I don't like it when people talk loudly in cars. It's just like. But in this case, I was like, I mean, who knows, right? Like, he's Turkish, maybe he's talking with family. So I was like, I'm just going to leave him alone. And then he hung up the phone and he was like, yeah, sorry about this. Like, I know it's rude, but like I had a phone call with someone from Turkey. And he had basically bought a house in Turkey for himself to kind of move there eventually once he's like done doing the Ubering in Germany. And that got hit by the earthquake, right? And completely nuked, no insurance, no nothing. So he kind of like just lost this entire investment. And he was like, yeah, my family was fine. And at that point, I was like, dude, this guy has it rough, right? Like, this just really sucks. Like, he comes here, he works, he wants to go back to Turkey once he's made his money, basically. Mm-hmm. And then, like, he gets completely fucked. Probably hasn't paid off that 150,000 for the house. So he now needs to stay here longer to pay it off. And then he doesn't have a house, right? So I was like, kind of feeling it. And then he told me, but yeah, it's like, this is like, it's not an accident, this this earthquake. I was like, okay, where's this coming from, right? Like, what are you talking about? And he was like, yeah, there's this professor in Turkey that has found out that Elon Musk with Starlink, right? Like, so Starlink with the Wi-Fi, they're projecting like frequencies that got the Earth swinging, whatever, and that's where the where the earthquake comes from. I was just sitting there, and I studied geology, like I was just sitting there. I was like, what the fuck? But I couldn't say anything because the dude was like in like this just shit, right? Your family lost their houses, he lost his house. So I was like, oh yeah, tell me more, right? Kind of trying to be nice. I was just sitting there dying inside. I was like, so like it's crazy how like misinformation these days, right? Like just crazy conspiracy theories get put into the world, and then like because people are suffering, they kind of latch onto it. It was kind of wild for me to see, and I think like even though like it's a shitty comparison, but we kind of see this. We see this in crypto too, right? Like
your analogies are always like absurdly reaching. I enjoy them for that exact reason.
Yeah,
it's like when we spoke about your girlfriend buying a chair, but not as a seat, but to put a plant on it, and that was some sort of analogy for talking to girls or something.
Oh, I don't even remember, but it was a good one. It was a good one. But anyway, like I don't even want to make the analogy really, but the whole conspiracy thinking has been getting so big lately. Like anything has to have a reason and cannot be for its own sake, right?
Yes.
Like I mean, shitty things happen. Stuff in markets go up and down because they do. It's kind of wild, but
that's why intellectuals make the worst traders, right? Because they need everything to make sense, and they need certainty, and they want to be able to like deduce as opposed to infer from like first principles what ought to be, and basically can't deal with shades of gray, and just need it to be black or white. And so people who try to sort of hyper rationalize, over intellectualize markets, make the worst speculators ever. So like if that's your frame of mind, it tends to be pretty terrible. Like if you're looking for like clear cut chain of causation everywhere, especially in these markets, which are like massively inefficient, that's probably not the best starting point for it.
Yes. And the smaller the market, the easier it is to push around, right? Like I still remember like people saying like when Bitcoin was trading at 2, 3, 4,000, and they were like, oh yeah, this and this, like it's because of this and this. But at that point, like some random dude could just buy 1 million, right?
Yes.
And it would go up a huge amount. And it's not because anything changed really, or it's not because of any narrative. This dude was just sitting there with 1 million in his pocket and was like, no, I actually like Bitcoin. And then he buys, it goes up like 10%. I mean, I don't think like 1 million back then would have pushed it up 10%, but like close enough, right?
Yes.
Markets get illiquid, and in general, like stuff gets crazy when the market cap is quite low. And you could see the same nowadays when I've seen a bunch of people kind of shill 50 or 500K market cap coins. And then they go up 2x. And then you could say, hey, this is the narrative that's driving this, but it's not. It's this random dude on Twitter just posting about it. And if you didn't have Twitter and you were sitting in that coin, you'd be like, oh shit, my narrative is catching on. Yeah, but it's not. It's not. It's just this random dude posting on Twitter. Yeah. So I take it with a grain of salt. And if someone tells you that like this is the reason for X, always doubt it, right? Yes. Because it's probably not. And even if it is, it makes sense to kind of think about it and think about if it's actually logical what that person is saying or not.
Yeah, financial journalism tends to be terrible for this, because whenever there's a market move, there has to be like a single most compelling explanation, you know?
Yeah.
Like I read one recently, like, oh, Bitcoin investors skittish based on like federal fund futures rate. But it's like, no, someone just market sold a lot at resistance, and you know there was follow up selling basically, you know.
Yes.
Like I think it's always best to start with the minimum most effective amount of complexity. So like market microstructure, for example, like aggressive buyers crossing the spread, aggressive sellers crossing the spread, and then the knock-on effects of that, and then you can sort of just build from there, as opposed to start from like the big picture, like, oh, the Fed is doing this and that's why this happened. It's just not super helpful, I think, to think in those terms. Shall we skirt over some news very quickly and then wrap up?
Yes. Yep.
Cool. Content tab. People always
Oh,
chastise me in the comments for saying
I was
that.
about to say this.
Yeah, nope, sorry, not doing it. Too much of a boomer. It's like the people who are like, can you guys go to dark mode? It's like, how about you go outside? Why should my conduct be corrective when it seems like you're the problem, you know?
I
Like,
mean, the
I
dark mode
refuse.
thing, I refuse, absolutely
refuse.
refuse. You
Completely
will not
refuse.
see me with dark chart. It's just wrong. People also
satanic.
use it.
It's evil.
It's horrendous. We're people of the lights.
Yes. We go
You want
outside
darkness
sometimes.
I mean,
No comment.
but I just don't like it, and I'm too boomer to change it. Like I've lived my entire life with with light screens. I don't want to start living with dark screens.
Yes.
So
Exactly.
I'm sorry.
I agree. Also, on a complete tangent before the news, unfortunately, I'm one of the, you know, that scenario you mentioned where it's like absurdist conspiracy nonsense, but
Yes.
because you're like a nice person, you sort of act charitably and courteously and sort of don't make a fuss.
Yes.
I'm unfortunately the opposite. When I find myself in those types of scenarios, I'm like the whole George Soros quote where I try to add fuel to the fire, and I'm like, how big of a grenade can I throw in the middle of this when I end up there? So I was, when I was kind of touring around, seeing friends and going to conferences in America as the market was going to zero last year, I was in like Florida with my friend, and we get into a taxi. An Uber thing as well. We're driving around, my friend's mostly talking to the driver. And it was a similar thing, right? It's like, oh, nobody wants to work and they're outsourcing our jobs to China and this, that, and the other. And they start getting into this, like, not back and forth. They sort of agree with each other about how there's this whole movement and labor market, that type of tone, right? And I'd said nothing the entire time, and I was just like, yeah, well, it's also the Jewish lobby at the World Economic Forum has really got an iron clasp on this type of thing. And the driver was like, yeah, exactly. And I'm like, oh no, this is you weren't supposed to say that, And I do this shit all the time. Like, one of my friends' mum is like a massive conspiracy theorist. And I don't mean that dismissively as in like, oh, if she doesn't read mainstream news, she's I mean literally as in like sort of Planned Parenthood and mRNA 5G. Like, this video thankfully isn't monetized because we'd be out immediately. But like all that type of stuff. So I just always lean into it to see how far I can push those beliefs. I'm basically the opposite of you. I'm like, oh, we're doing this? Okay, let's really do it. I guess that's why my social life suffers as a result. Nonetheless, news. Cathie Wood's ARK Invest adds $3.9 million worth of coin. Quite a big position now. She's kind of been adding throughout. I still like coin in general. I think if equities are going to turn around at some point sooner rather than later, and that aligns with a crypto bull market, and Coinbase stops being cringe and failing like with its NFT stuff and does more of this seemingly cool, more decentralized layer 2 base, whatever it's working on, I expect it to do quite well, Like, historically, the boomer portfolios of crypto exposure of like MicroStrategy, Nvidia, etc. have been like kind of cringe, and Coinbase didn't really have a chance to do a full cycle because they listed at the cycle top. I think given the cyclical nature of crypto as a market, and then Coinbase being the sort of blue chip on ramp for it, which seems to also be willing to take some risks in the space and be crypto native, I think it's pretty attractive, just in general, as a non, cringe, for lack of a better term, way of getting crypto exposure if you're more boom oriented. I don't think coin stock is the worst thing in the world, especially because we haven't seen it go through a full market cycle, as mentioned. What do you think of this?
I agree. I don't think it's the worst move. I mean, ARK is just hilarious. It's just, I mean, what the fuck? But I do agree with you, and I think in general, like, I mean, Cathie Woods is gonna make out like a bandit no matter what happens. I mean, just make
even just from the fees, right? Christ.
Exactly, that's what I was about to say. Like, she just needs to buy the controversial shit, which I actually like hate this development, but it's like it's the way to make money nowadays. You just do controversial shit and then sell something, or like you buy the controversial shit and you kind of just enable people to have these like crazy views or crazy positions, or in general, like just do wild stuff, and you're gonna do quite well.
Yes.
Because the outliers get more and more centralized, and then it gets crazy and crazy. Like every year, I feel like everything is just kind of like getting more extreme, basically.
Or you're just getting old, Don.
Or maybe I'm just getting old. Yeah, I mean, this is literally what every old person says, so maybe that's just it. But yeah, I think that's not necessarily her worst move. I mean, she's been trading absolute garbage tier from what I've been seeing, but the coin purchases don't seem too terrible to me. I think if the S&P or the traditional markets kind of hold supports, that's just gonna like double again. Like we've seen that coin moved up like what, like almost 200% from the bottom. I don't
Yeah, it
quite.
was pretty meaty.
Oh yeah, it's 170%.
Yeah.
And I think maybe we drift on that. Maybe we drift down to 47 again. But I think from that we could easily double again to like 100-ish. And yeah, good for her. I think that's one of her smarter purchases.
The arc chart
Um,
is hilarious, though, right?
oh yeah,
Like that's
ARC
like
looks
market
horrendous.
cycle. I mean, this is like such a retail heavy in terms of participation ETF as well, right? So no
Yes.
surprise that it just played out exactly like a market cycle Wall Street cheat sheet bullshit thing. And if you look
Yeah.
at the volume distribution in terms of how much of it happened, like both at the top and on the way down,
It's very much not
it's pretty
nice.
much
Yeah.
what you'd expect, right? So that'll be a fun one to follow. I agree. This like there seems to be like a grift meta where you basically just almost market yourself and sell the controversy, and even if the financial performance isn't there to back it up, the fees and the carry are. So then you're comfy either way, right? Curious. Base protocol token jumps 250% despite no affiliation with Coinbase. This is funny. So obviously Coinbase's layer 2 thing built on optimism is called Base, which is quite nice because then their ticker for their equity is Coin. So Coinbase, cool, neat, okay.
Yes.
However, there's just a Base token which has nothing to do with the Coinbase layer 2, which mooned. And I think it's actually some rebase token thing. So it's like a proper shitcoin as far as I'm aware. And it was up 250% on this news. So to people who say like, if you really believe in like strong, efficient markets hypothesis, it's like maybe crypto isn't the best place to do
No.
that because it isn't. But this kind of stuff is really funny. It reminds me of when during the legacy stuff, there was like Zoom and then there was ZM, right? And when Zoom was mooning, ZM would moon as well because people thought they were buying Zoom. Or the other way around, whatever it was.
And
It's just
I
like
think in general,
hilarious stuff like that.
the funny thing is, like, I think it's not only that, it's also people just speculating that other people might think that.
Yes.
Like, literally, like, I think the base token, for example, I think at least half of it is people speculating that other people are going to be stupid. And I could even see, like, this happening to everything of it, right? Something going up. And it's only people that think that other people might think that it's this, even though
Yes.
it's not. It's quite funny. Like,
I
this
mean,
whole
that was the
thing is
entire
just.
2021 bull market, right? It's like we were
Yes.
front running the institutions, which never came. So
Yes.
this is what we do, and it's also like the whole China narrative. It's like, is it Chinese people buying? No, it's like Americans buying in the hopes that Chinese people will come and buy from them.
Yeah, and then it's Chinese people buying coins that they think Americans might think are Chinese, which is so funny. Like, what the fuck? It's absurd. And I mean, we commented on this at the top, right? Where we're like, okay, this narrative is like one that is like very far fetched. And I think it's cooled down quite a bit, right? I haven't even checked on the supposedly China coins. Oh yeah, Neo is down since then by 25%. How is Phil like Filecoin doing? Phil,
Down
yeah,
10 today.
also down 25% from the highs. I mean,
Nice.
that's just when these kind of bullshit narratives get hot. Usually, I mean, that's a bad sign, right? Like, that's
Right.
not what you wanna be seeing. That's also like adding. I mean, just me shit talking my position. I mean, we have monthly, we have weekly resistance, and we have a bullshit narrative that people bought into and are now getting completely
I mean,
fucked
this one
on.
was particularly bad done. You know, like they're all garbage, but this one just felt like it was like really contrived, even as
Oh
far as
yeah,
altcoin narratives go. But yeah,
good times.
there's a lesson there as far as and thing is, like, I think there's enough evidence to suggest that as far as altcoin narratives go, it's not new inflow type of narratives, right? It's not retail bull market type of narratives. It's the existing participants just acting like mercenaries, rotating faster and faster, getting more degen and degen, and squeezing what they can out of the
Yes.
coins that are around. And you know that it's pretty desperate when it gets to like China, Boomer, Dino stuff. IMF calls for coordinated action over fears crypto could undermine global monetary system. I mean, this just seems unreasonable. Like, if you look at the actual total market cap of crypto, this doesn't seem like a meaningful concern, right? And if it were one, we would have seen it when everything imploded last year. If there was any systemic shock spillover to the real economy, like that's about as ugly as we've had it in terms of just like mass liquidations and contagion and liquidity events, right? And fuck all happened. And it's also nice to see the IMF do the standard. Directors noted that regulation should be mindful not to stifle innovation, and the public sector could leverage some of the underlying technologies of crypto assets for their public policy objectives. We've been hearing this since even before we got into crypto, right? Like blockchain, not Bitcoin. The underlying tech is good, but crypto is a scam. Enterprise
They need
blockchain.
to shut the fuck up.
They just shut the fuck up. It's like, you're wrong. This is tiresome. If there's any value to be had, it's in a form like it has to be crypto native to some extent and be crypto money as opposed to expensive spreadsheets, you know. But yeah, this just seems like, I mean, look, it's an easy time as a regulator to just say crypto bad. So I'm not
because
surprised.
everything's down. Yeah,
everything is down.
Everything's down and FTX imploded. So I mean, it's easy to be like the person that's just hating on it. You see these people crawl out, and the moment crypto is kind of like talked about positively, I mean, when we were trading at 60K, you didn't see these kind of comments left and right and center, right? And I mean, if they were like actual serious people, they would be all over it at 60K, but they're not.
No, just momentum clout chasers.
Yeah, I mean, it's embarrassing. And the thing is, right, I wouldn't say that is embarrassing, because I like to an extent, I actually agree with a lot of what is said outside of crypto about crypto, because it's a place for grifting most of the time, right?
Yes.
The biggest scams, the biggest grifts, like all of it is just crypto. Like, it's just kind of like it comes hand in hand. But what they are doing is basically they're promoting the grifts by kind of like regulating the good things out of it.
Yes.
Which is completely absurd, right? You go in there and they're like, okay, fuck these people. And then they go hard at like people that are trying to make it legitimate, because those are the only ones that they can actually catch. And then everyone just moves over to the illegitimate. Thank you.
No
Horrendous word. Anyway, everyone moves over to that, and then they get fucked, right?
Yes.
So all they've been doing is protecting people from actually buying good stuff and moving them into shitty stuff, and pisses me off. Like, it's just so
It empowers the bad faith actors.
Yes.
Because the good faith actors are accessible and have a target on their back. The bad faith actors are like offshore, hiding, doing whatever. And you take out the big fish, which tend to be good, or try to be, like the visible ones, the US-based ones, so on and so forth. The ones who are trying to adhere to impossible regulation. And then that just leaves your offshore people who are willing to grift, reg arb, do whatever. And, you know, people want exposure to the sector, and they'll get it in whatever way they can, right? And you just kind of shepherd them to riskier venues.
It just reminds me like very much of how Binance came to be and how Binance came to power, basically. I mean, we had Bittrex, right? Everyone was trading on Bittrex and Poloniex, and they were like at least trying a little bit to adhere to regulations. So like, this is fucking nuts. We cannot handle all of this.
Yes.
And then they kind of went out of the limelight, and Binance was just like, fuck it. We're going to make so much money. We can take care of that all later, right?
Yes.
And Binance just ran with it. I mean, if you look back on the early days of Binance, they didn't give a fuck. At least it seemed like it to me.
Right.
Like, they were just doing wild shit that I very much doubt was in any capacity like okay to do. Allegedly in Minecraft.
In Minecraft, yeah. BitMEX the same, allegedly, in Minecraft, right? All
I mean, like the big venues, they're just like, fuck it. We're just going to run with it when the market's hot. And then they make so much money that they can buy like the best lawyers on the planet and buy regulators. And then they're mostly fine, right? I mean, I'm not hating, especially if they actually turn legit afterwards.
It's a different business approach, right?
But it's like, if you think about it, it's just absurd, right? So these people that are trying their best to kind of adhere to rules that are set out, and these rules are set out like for good reason, right? You want to have some sort of rule book. You don't want to have people just going completely crazy. And they get shafted, right? Bittrex doesn't really exist anymore. No one trades there. Poloniex, I mean, they sold basically to
His
Justin Sun.
Excellency, yeah.
Yes. So like these exchanges that tried, or at least I mean, I would give them the benefit of the doubt that they tried because no one else would kind of give away their customers like this. Because for the people that don't know, Bittrex actually they were like, we're not accepting customers anymore during the hottest period of crypto, in my opinion, like in general. Like when during 2017, end of 17 into 18, there was just like you cannot sign up anymore. We have too many people. Like that's crazy, right? If you just run it and you just like run a spreadsheet and you put all the money somewhere and you're like, fuck it, we're gonna make so much money. People using our exchange, like that's a shitload of money to be made. So
Yes.
the only reason to do it is basically because you're like afraid of regulations and you're afraid to kind of break some rules. And the people that weren't afraid to break rules, they're the ones that are now big. And well, I mean, at least Binance hasn't like fucked us over, but they could have, right? This could have been like a huge kind of ginormous shit show, but gladly didn't turn out that way.
Yeah, the
But
incentives are just completely turned upside down. They're on
exactly.
their head. But also we see this with individuals to some extent as well, right? Where they'll sort of front load their grift, and then after they've made a shit ton of money, then they clean up their act
Oh
publicly,
yeah,
or
yeah,
try
yeah.
to.
There's
They give money to people and fucking, oh, we've now got a policy about disclosing tokens and so on and so forth. But like that's all performative. Because like you've made all the money from the grift, you've kept all the money from the grift, or if you gave something back, it was like some symbolic token amount, no pun intended, well pun kind of
yes.
intended, and then so whatever quote unquote reparations or corrective action you take after the fact, it doesn't fix the unjust enrichment. You just sort of take on this act of reputation washing after you've made all the money without also giving back that money. So it's like a win-win. Like I'm going to front load my grift, I'm going to be really aggressive, skirt all the laws, accumulate as much wealth as possible, and then just use a small fraction of that to reputation wash after the fact, and voila, I've won, you know?
Oh yeah, there's quite a few people like that
Loads.
on both YouTube and Twitter,
Yeah.
which I find quite absurd. And the thing is, like
At least
people
you
are
know
like,
what I'm going
oh,
to do now, right? So,
and people are like, oh, this like they cleaned up the act, like don't hate on them, whatever. But it's like, dude, I mean, this is the just use your brain. Like, what are they doing, right? They like one example is allegedly in Minecraft, whatever, Crypto Man Ran or whatever he's called, with their show, where
so
they
this is a
kind of like,
theoretical show you're talking about that doesn't
oh
exist in
yeah, yeah, it
reality. So,
doesn't.
so you're conceptualizing a theoretical example of what this might look like in a parallel universe.
Exactly.
Okay.
There's
I just want to
obviously
make
not.
clear we're not talking about anything based in reality or
No,
any
this is like,
coincidence or sort of relation to something that exists in the real world is purely coincidental. Please go on.
yeah, I just made all of it up anyway.
Yes.
But like what basically happens is they shill coins that are like complete garbage to people, make a bunch of money on it by getting early allocations, and then like there was like, and you could see this in wallet movements, and they actually like actually confirmed that this was the case, and that they're now cleaning up their act and like all of this shit. But it's like you kind of like at some point, I don't think you deserve a second chance, and especially if it's the fifth or sixth or seventh or eighth chance, right? Where you just kind of take money out of people's pockets, and you do this over and over and over and over again, and then once there's nothing left to fleece, just like, oh, sorry about this. It's never going to happen again. We have like rules, like we have our code of conduct now. Was early mistakes, whatever, and I'm just like, it just disgusts me. Like if you do this, I would very much doubt your integrity from any point forward, because I mean, if you do something like this, you have to be a certain kind of human being to do it. And I don't think that changes necessarily. So
yeah, if that were real, that would be very unfortunate. So thank God we're speculating on counterfactuals that have no bearing on reality. I also agree that if your so-called corrective action doesn't cost you anything, then why should I believe it to be genuine, right?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Let's say I sort of leverage my Twitter, do whatever, and in bad faith grift my way to 10 million or something, coming soon. Let's say that happens, and then I make the money, I keep the money, and then I decide, well, you know what, I'm going to post this thread, and I'm going to post an apology and say that I'm going to be better going forward, and I keep 9.99 million out of that. How seriously should you take my apology? Well, it has come at basically no personal cost to me. So why should it hold any weight? You know?
Yeah, it doesn't.
I've always found that to be very strange. But it works. That's the sad part. It actually works. You're like, oh, look at them. They're like, look at this theoretical person. They've changed and they're good now. It's like, well, to what effect? You know, it's very hard to explain because it should be so self-evident. But the fact that it works is quite shocking.
Yes.
But yes,
I mean,
thankfully there are no real examples of this.
No, we've never seen anything like this in crypto at all. But yeah, I don't know. It kind of makes me sad because people want to believe in the good of like whoever they watch, which I find quite a good thing to have, like just faith in humanity, basically. We have way too little of it, but for good reason, as like you see when you're kind of looking around this space, especially. So it kind of makes me sad when people take advantage of basically the ignorance of either their followers or just in general people, right? Because people want to believe that you have their best in mind, and then people just don't. It's sad. And
I hate when people do it because I should be the only one doing it. They're
yes.
taking away my customers, which is unacceptable. Fund manager Daniel Cheng, probably Chung, Chung, suing over lost funds. So this is actually a crypto fund manager. This is the dude who like shorted ETH, winter is coming, whatever type of guy, if you remember. And so he's a fund manager, but he gave this other dude like 1 mil to trade for him, and then the other guy invested the money into some yield farm fund, and now he's suing him to get the money back. And I just I found the whole thing to be super strange because like he was like a publicly bearish, then maybe he flipped or whatever, but he's like a fund manager trading secondary markets. I think it's a mandate of the fund, and now it's called Syncrasy Capital. But for some reason, in order to take like a 1 mil bet on ETH, he gave the money to some other dude who then fucked it, and I was trying to sue him to get it back. Like, someone is LARPing here, right? Like, this doesn't make any sense at all. Surely you should have like a personal account to trade that on, or your own fund account. And it's not like a particularly complex trade. Like, you want to short ETH. How long does that take? Especially if you're like a fund as you are at the moment, or if you've been in crypto and are now a fund manager, you shouldn't have to give your money to someone to trade ETH directionally for you. That seems
odd.
That seems odd. And I think the broader lesson here is, if you want to trade something, please do it yourself. You know, to our audience, like, don't give money to people to trade for you, or some sort of like proprietary fund algorithmic trading strategy, this, that, and the other. Most of it is complete horse shit. And if it isn't, there should be, you know, very well regulated vehicles for proper like fund investment. Like, you're either doing that or you're probably getting scammed. There are very few legitimate things in between.
So wait, you're telling me the guy that I gave my money to that put it into a spreadsheet isn't actually someone that I should be trusting?
There's a chance.
It's absurd. Like, stuff that happens during the bull market always fucking cracks me to shit. Like, during the bull market, it's absurd to me, and I'm like, oh wow, this is wild. And then during the bear market, when you've had some time to digest it all, it's just like, what the fuck is this shit? Like, who came up with this? Like, every time, like, you have a year to digest, and you're like, so people actually just like send their fucking crypto to a guy that they don't even know, that they don't even have a name of, and then they send it to them, and they're like, oh, I'm gonna get so fucking rich.
And then they act surprised.
And then they're like, Pikachu face, what the fuck? Where did my money go? Like, what the fuck do you expect?
I remember probably one of the most I've felt disconnected from the market was early NFT bull market, where I didn't really understand the concept of like mints and all this other stuff. And I would just open up Twitter and read that some artist just made like $5 million or something.
Oh, yeah.
And I was just like, I was like, what's going on? I must be missing something here, right? And then I realized that no, I'm not missing anything. It's just like, there was a point for quite a long period of time where if you had an NFT mint and you put a modicum of effort into it, i.e. you chose the silver tier on Fiverr and not the bronze tier for your project, then you could basically mint it out and then raise a ton of money, and then the treasury was your own personal slush fund. And whether you immediately rugged or soft rugged, like we're still seeing some soft rugs happen now, right?
Yeah.
So like projects that raised money in the NFT bull had like millions in runway and had a roadmap with obviously the key components, which is utility, metaverse, game, merch, like the fucking scammer starter pack, basically.
Yes.
And then you blink and the money's gone. And usually what happens is they tried to trade at first and then got wrecked and decided, you know what, I want to be a millionaire. I'm out, basically. So I look forward to that coming back in one way or another, because that's not going anywhere. Or at least the attempt to recreate that. Which brings us to our next news article of OpenSea makes changes to fees following tension with Blur. Which is a very awkward thing to say with a British English accent. Sounds like I'm like retching. Nonetheless, blur. Yeah, it's terrible. OpenSea said it was dropping its fee to 0% for a period of time, while also moving to a 0.5% creator earnings model with the option for sellers to pay more. So it seems like we're at a sort of fee-oriented and royalties-oriented race to the bottom as far as NFTs go. I'm in two minds about this. I haven't spent enough time talking to really intelligent people who are really into this. But the second sort of tab I have open is a thread by K2_NFT, who basically just documented this PvP fucking war. I don't know if you saw this thread.
Oh, it's so fucking great. Yeah.
Yeah, and how like it's literally about as PvP NFT trading as it gets, right?
I love it.
Bids, people getting filled, puking, round tripping. So this is one of the concerns I had. The NFTs supposedly being like a less financialized product, less adversarial PvP, more about the sort of art, collection, community holding, and now basically a Trojan horse for derivatives trading, right? Because eventually you're like, oh, well, this is so liquid, like what else is liquid and where else can I use leverage? And all roads lead to Rome if Rome is losing your money on high leveraged perps. So it just seems like we're sort of transitioning from NFTs being, oh, well, it's not that deep, it's not some super complex PvP financial product type of thing, and now because liquidity dried up in the bear market, there's a chance that we overcorrect towards that and basically turn the JPEGs into perps, and I'm not entirely sure how to feel about that. But what do you think about this whole Blur, OpenSea PvP dumpage stuff going on?
Yeah, I mean, it's wild.
As an esteemed NFT holder, which you are.
Oh yeah,
especially on Polygon, you're like the incumbent fucking celebrity on there. You know?
Oh, I'm in the top 50 holders of fucking Trump, which is quite funny to me. I didn't realize that I was actually like in the top 50 until someone pointed it out, which is very, very funny, especially given that I'm not that into Trump. But I mean, it's good. It's good that we're getting some competition, but I think Blur is kind of going, like this whole thing is going too crazy. So I don't know how that's going to end, but I don't think it's going to end pretty. I think a lot of these people that are basically trying to game the airdrop that they're going to get are going to sit on a bunch of NFTs that they don't want or have too much exposure to, especially given, I mean, Blur, the token has not been doing too well either, right? As far as I remember. From looking at it, yeah, I mean, it did okay. It listed okay, went up for a while, and it's dropped from the high by like 40% before like today bouncing, or like in the last 4 hours bouncing. So like if that token takes a big hit and these people kind of have NFTs that they don't want to have at the end of the day, I don't know how that's going to end up nicely for like people that have NFTs.
Yes. Also, these people don't know how to trade a lot of the time.
Yes.
So this is like entirely new to them. This like liquid adversarial market, sort of paradigm. That's not something they're used to.
No.
For a lot of these NFT people, their only experience is just like OpenSea, get in early, get in at the mint and just hold and watch the floor price go up or stay the same. A lot of the time, they don't even know what the fucking price of ETH is, right? They don't really understand the cost of trading, because the fees on OpenSea are so high, so they think they're making a profit, but they're not. There's all sorts of inexperience, and you suddenly shove those people in the deep end of the pool in like a perp fight, basically. There's a bit of a steep learning curve there.
Oh yeah, and the thing is that I mean, in the NFT world, right? Something that happens is basically the people that got into NFTs early, they had a bunch of NFTs that are now like very well received, right? I mean, with the apes, with the punks, all that kind of stuff. So they kind of got like a cult status of sorts, and
Yes.
people followed them. And NFTs, they're so illiquid that if you have one, enough funds, and two, you can kind of like push, especially if you're NFT native, right? If you're not NFT native, no one really gives a shit about your opinion, which is good. But in general, like they couldn't really lose. Like there was like this long period of time where it's basically all because art is very subjective, right? And no one really knows what the fuck something should be worth. With coins, you can kind of pick out whether something's good or not. With art, it's like, I mean, the biggest garbage is worth millions in the art market, right? Like the biggest, I mean, ugly looking shit, basically. But I can say it's garbage, but maybe it's not, right? It's just very hard to judge. So basically, people were looking what their favorite people were doing and then trading entirely off of that. And these favorite people are now trading like a normal market, basically. Like you said, they were thrown into deep end, and I think that's going to end quite funny. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not really good at NFT trading. Every time I buy NFTs, either ETH goes down and my NFTs go up in ETH, but the ETH dump basically undoes most of my gains, or the other way around.
Nice.
So like I've made money with my NFT escapades, I think every time I've traded them. But every time if I just bought ETH or just sold ETH, I would have just probably outperformed anyway. So
You're the up in USD meme of this generation, as
oh
opposed to the
yeah,
altcoin Bitcoin people.
with NFTs, most definitely. So, I mean, the only exception is my Trump coins. Those, since I've bought, went up in both ETH value and ETH went up in value. But then again, I'm top 50 holder. Like, if I wanted to sell this shit, I'd probably drive it down 50%. So
it's okay. You get a Zoom call out of it or something, Don. So
we'll see about that. It's
pays for
Trump
itself.
after all.
Yeah, true. Final point I want to make is go to trletter.com and sign up to our free weekly newsletter. We were shilling resistance last week, talking about being defensive, given the market was at resistance, present a decent argument to be defensive, market at resistance, did the same for ETH, defensive, no high time evidence of a breakout. Like, the newsletter is a very curious thing, because sometimes I'm sure you get the same. You'll get tagged and say, "Oh, why are your levels slightly different to like what's in the newsletter?" Right?
Yes.
Now the thing is, and also macro charts don't support risk. S&P moved lower from there. Tesla also pulled back, I think. So
Yes.
like this week was particularly sort of unambiguous and aged well. We're trying to shill you the newsletter to sign up because it's free. However, when we get questions about, your levels differ slightly from those in the newsletter, how do you explain that? We've been writing this thing for like quite a while now, right? It's like 4 years or something, 4 or 5 years. I don't remember how long. And it's kind of developed its own system with its own levels and its own entry triggers and its own kind of approach. And so if you want like a really conservative, higher time frame swing trading overview of the market that doesn't have any of this like subjective gut feeling or sudden flip-flop or my last 2 trades were this, so because this is the third, but I'm going to do that, and just something sort of that thinks on its own. I think the newsletter's done pretty well over the last few years, and it's just, especially if you hate our personalities, which is completely understandable and relatable, if not expected, and you just want like the straight up analysis, the levels, a no bullshit system of its own. I think Technical Roundup kind of flies under the hood as far as the emails we send out. So go check it out, trletter.com, if you haven't already. And the fact that I've shilled it means we're going to get it completely wrong next week, but somewhere down the line we'll get it right again. So check that out if you haven't. Don, any final notes, questions, concerns, fears, existential points of dread, anything of the sort?
No, I'm good. Excellent. I think we've talked about everything that we need to talk about.
Agreed. That's all from us. As always, we're grateful for your support on the Casual Friday. Let's hope the show doesn't go anywhere, not until Don quits or I scam. In the meantime, enjoy the show. Leave us a like if you enjoy Casual Friday. Subscribe to the channel. Almost the 50k subs. That would mean both nothing and also very much at the same time. So yeah, help us have a great weekend, all that stuff. Don, thank you. We'll see you all next week.
Bye bye.